Lesson 5.2, Solving Inequalities by Multiplication and Division. Our essential question says, what causes the symbol to flip when solving an inequality? Our first question says, what do we have to remember about multiplication and division inequalities? And the answer says, if you multiply or divide by a negative number, you must flip your inequality symbol around. So it's when you multiply or divide by a negative number, that you flip your inequality symbol around. So flip means that greater than would turn into a less than, or say greater than or equal to would turn into a less than or equal to, and so on. So the same would be true for your less than. It would turn into a greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. So you have to flip your symbol around. If you are dividing by a negative number or multiplying by a negative number. Our first example says 5x is greater than negative 20. Okay? The action step to solve this inequality, it's just one step. My action step to get the x alone will be to divide by 5. So the result would be x is greater than negative 4. Now, you may notice that I did not flip my symbol. Because I divided both sides by 5. I divided by positive 5. So that does not flip your symbol around. My action step, the piece where I'm dividing on both sides, if that was a negative, that would flip my symbol. Dividing by a positive 5, don't flip it, okay? This next one, I've got negative 12 is greater than or equal to negative 3x. So I'm going to divide both sides by negative 3 because that's what's in front of my x. I want to get the x by itself. So I bring down my x, and negative 12 divided by negative 3 is 4. But I divided by a negative 3. And dividing by a negative 3 flips my symbol, so I need to flip my symbol around so it opens up at my x. Now, we don't have to graph in this section. If I did have to graph, I would reverse the whole inequality like this to get x on the left-hand side. But that's just for graphing purposes. So you are okay with leaving your inequality like this. When I read through the answers, if we correct homework and read through the answers, probably will have the variable on the left. So you would have to understand that 4 is less than or equal to x is the same as x is greater than or equal to 4. Okay, another one step. For this inequality, I need to multiply because my variable was being divided by negative 2. So I need to multiply by negative 2 on both sides to get the variable by itself. And my action step was multiplying by negative 2. So that means I'm going to need to flip my symbol. And 11 times negative 2 is negative 22. So it's that action step that matters. Next one, my action step is multiplying by 5. So I'm not flipping my symbol on this one. Negative 40 is less than or equal to x. Or, if you look at the way the symbol is opening up, it's opening up at the x. If you want the variable on the left-hand side, reverse. Now, your favorite kind of problems, when we have a fraction times our variable. Hopefully you remember that we multiplied these by the reciprocal. So the reciprocal here is 3 over negative 2. So I am multiplying by a negative fraction, so that means I am going to have to flip my symbol. So my fractions have canceled out. I flip my symbol, put a 1 under my -10, multiply straight across. -30, -2, and that would be +15. Now, another of your favorite things, word problems. Define a variable, write an inequality, and solve this problem. Okay. Luke needs at least $3,500 to buy the car he wants. If he earns $8.50 per hour at his job, how many hours will he need to work to buy the car? Well, I'm going to use the variable h for hours. Okay? He needs at least. So let's talk about this word. If he needs at least $3,500, he's got to have $3,500 or more, or else guess what? He can't buy the car. So it certainly can't be less than $3,500. It's got to be greater than or equal to. He makes $8.50 per hour. So I'm going to multiply $8.50 times h, the number of hours he needs to work. So if I divide $3,500 by $8.50, I should be able to find out how many hours he has to work. So 3,500 divided by 850 gives me 411.76. So I would say Luke needs to work, assuming that he has to work a whole amount of hours, at least 412 hours, because you would round that up. If he worked 411, he would not have enough money. And if his job requires him to work whole amounts of hours, he would have to work 412 then. Okay, my next one. Jesse has more than 45 CDs. This is about 1/4 of the amount that Sue has. How many does Sue have? So I'm going to use S for Sue's CDs. Okay? So Jesse has more than 45. And this is about 1/4 of the amount that Sue has. Okay. So, Jesse's amount is 45. It's about 1/4 of the amount that Sue has. So, 45, and I've got to have 1/4 of the amount that Sue has. Jesse has more than 45. More than 45. So maybe I want to go with more than 45 would be greater than 45. And maybe I want my 1/4 of what Sue has. So we'll see if this makes sense. Okay? So I'm going to move this up a little. All right, so if I solve this, 1/4 of, because of means multiply. So 1/4 of what Sue has. So I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal. Multiply by the reciprocal. And the reciprocal of 1/4 is just 4. So now this is telling me that Sue has more than 45 times 4, so that would be 180 CDs. So, does that make sense? If Jesse had more than 45, and that was about 1/4 of what Sue has more than 180. That makes sense to me. So, Sue has more than 180 CDs. So think about that fraction. If Jesse has about 1/4 the amount that Sue has, that means Sue has about 4 times as many as Jesse. It's time to write your summary, answering your essential question. And here are your homework problems. And notice that they are just the evens today. Take your time, and pay attention to whether or not you need to flip your inequality symbol around.